Welcome. Let's see if I can get the chat working. Hi, I can see that there's about 20 people waiting. So hopefully you can see me now and you can hear me now. Check out the castle behind. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Tariq. Nice to see that it's working. Can you hear me? Is my most important question. If you could just let me know, please. It's working just fine. Great, good to know, Sandy. Thank you, Jennifer, for letting me know as well. So welcome. Hey, welcome, Noreen. Oh, yes. Of course, the bearers. Excellent. I'm just streaming through YouTube. Yesterday, when it didn't work through the Streamlabs, I tried to do that. I tested it a few times last night, and it was an absolute disaster. So I'm just sticking with YouTube at the moment, and we'll see where it leads. Hey, Adrian, welcome. Lovely to see you. And hello, Bonnie. Thanks for joining, everybody. So here we are in wonderful Ghent. And I love coming to Ghent, let's say. And yeah, just going to take a little wander around, show you the main landmarks. That's what's going to happen today. And then tomorrow I'm doing a nighttime walk around, which is more, you know, the visuals are just completely different, obviously. And then what I'm going to do is show you cool stuff tomorrow night and then talk about the history in much more detail. But let's just take a wander around town starting now. So, check out this beautiful entrance here. And this is the entrance to the old fish market, where they would auction fish. And it seems like a good place to start. Not because Ghent was so much focused around fishing. It was much more than that. But on this wonderful Baroque facade here, so this is from the late 1600s. You can see Neptune at the top. And then over on this side here, we've got a male figure representing the Schelde River, and here a female figure representing the Leie River. And why I thought this would be a good place to start is because this is where Ghent takes its name from. It's the confluence of these two rivers. That's the whole idea. So there's Neptune up there. It's a lovely evening as well. I must say, it does help. There's the line of Flanders. And here is the female figure representing the Leie. And the male Schelde over here. And all this rustication that if you were on my previous tours, you know I'm not a fan of. I really don't like rustication. But anyway, it is a very grand and wonderful entrance. And it makes sense, of course, that Baroque has got so much more presence here than, say, in Amsterdam, because it was much more Catholic here than in Amsterdam. Isn't it super? And look at these wonderful Ionic column tops here. They're not sort of true in the sense that the volutes, they're actually made to look like fish's tails. I've never actually noticed that detail before. How absolutely wonderful. Okay, you can see it really clearly on this one. Fish tail volutes. Quite wonderful, really. So yeah, Ghent, or Ghent, or Ghent in French, is from an old Celtic word meaning the confluence of two rivers, and it was those two rivers. And a lot of Ghent is lovely and old, and a lot of it is lovely and not so old. Because, I mean, it's still relatively old, because the city got a huge big facelift in the early 1900s, and that was in preparation for it hosting a world exhibition, and exposition, however you want to say it. And that's when these buildings, neo-Gothic, neo-Renaissance, however you want to say, there's kind of crossover between the two, were all built, and the whole city was given a real sort of facelift. And then, of course, the line up here. Line of Flanders. Ghent is the capital of Flanders. How's that for a dramatic sky? There's something very, very charming about this square, and I'll show you the English explanation of it. Maybe I can get this all in shot. It's an art installation. I think you can probably see this. I'll read it to you. So the street lights on the plain are connected to the maternity hospitals in the city of Ghent. Every time the light slowly flashes, a child is born. This work is dedicated to the newborn and all the children who are born today in this city. So yeah, it's kind of funny, by the way, they say that it sounds a bit like when they flash the lights, it causes the child to be born. Of course, it's the other way around. The lights that they're talking about are these street lights here. And it still happens to this day. This art installation predates COVID, but during COVID it really came into its own because people weren't allowed into the maternity wards in the hospitals. So the family members, so the people would all gather here on the square with champagne and glasses, in telephonic contact, no doubt, with their relatives in the hospital. And as soon as the light flashed, of course, they would crack open the champagne. So that was quite wonderful. And I was here just a month or so ago, scouting to do this tour. And actually, in the daytime, we saw some people who were doing exactly that. They were waiting with bottles to celebrate. Okay. How's this for a wonderful castle entrance? Hey Ruth, welcome. Thank you for joining. I love this gate. I never see this gate closed, you know, because normally, so I'm just going to straighten the phone a bit. Normally when I'm out doing these things, this gate's open. It is a wonderful gate. Behind the green door. It looks like, yeah, you could lock them in. That's not the idea. I suppose you have to lock on your way out nowadays. Anyway, this castle is called Gravensteen. And that basically means, well, steen means stone, and graf means count. And it basically means the dwelling, the fort, if you will, the great stone house of the Count. And it was built by Count of Flanders. So let's go back a little bit. I'm not going to focus too much on history on this tour. I thought, as I said, I'm going to save that for the nighttime one, which is much more visual, and then I can go into more detail on stuff. But the Counts of Flanders were given that job by the French kings, and this was like a fiefdom of France. I'm talking a very long time ago now. I'm talking like way back, like the 900s or something. And their job was to keep the coastline safe from pirates. Simple. And that's what they did. And for centuries. And Viking raids, although the Vikings are never much of a problem here. And that's because of how Ghent is situated. It's a bit inland, so it's not so vulnerable to coastal raids. But because of the canal system of Europe, it was quite well positioned as a manufacturing town. Anyway, in the 1100s, mid to late 1100s, the then Count of Flanders wasn't too pleased because he had a wooden fort, and the local noblemen and traders who were building themselves great big stone houses, and he basically needed to outclass them. So this is what he built himself, going like, hey, I'm in charge here, don't you forget it. And it is a wonderful castle. I love the audio guide. If you visit it, there's an audio guide by a Flemish stand-up comedian, and it's in English as well, and it's very amusing and very well done. So I definitely recommend a visit to that if you're here. I've done it a couple of times. Love it. And yeah, it's been many things over the years. At its lowest point, I guess it was actually a cotton mill, and that there was then derelict and going to be broken down. But like so much of Ghent, it was restored and pimped up for this 1913 World Exhibition. Very famously, look, it was never a castle for defense. Because it's in the middle of the town. It was just a vanity project, if you will. But it was actually occupied once in its history, and this is very famously by Ghent students in 1949 who were upset about the huge increase in the taxes on beer and the fact that the police were now a little bit incognito, not quite as visible. That annoyed them as well. So they actually took possession of it. It wasn't exactly a fair fight because they did have the element of surprise on their side because nobody was expecting that. They would far more have expected the Spanish Inquisition. Anyway, let's head into the main drag. And before we get there, there's all sorts of beautiful things actually. There's this House of the Heads here. So we had Counts of Flanders, we had multiple Dukes of Burgundy, and then of course we had the Habsburgs. How long did they hold it, Sandy? 3 hours, I believe. It's still celebrated by students every year. So, let's zoom in a little bit. Here we have, I won't call him my hero, because I don't necessarily think we would have got on very well. I agreed with his politics terribly, but Charles V. And of course, lots and lots and lots of dukes and counts. Charles V was actually born in Ghent, so he was very much a local, although he travelled around a lot, let's be fair. He kind of had trouble standing still. He's the one who famously said, and he didn't say it in English, obviously. I wonder if any of you remember this from my other tours. He famously said, I speak Spanish to God, French to men, Italian to women, and German to my horse. Okay. So I bet you had an extremely obedient horse. Anyway. Yeah, so Ghent has really got so much of this wonderful sort of stepped gable architecture. We have a little bit of that in Amsterdam. Actually, this is the hotel I stayed in last time I was here. Very over the top. And I had there's an apartment at the top that has 360-degree views of the skyline of the city. It was absolutely brilliant. Well, the views were anyway. So yeah, it's called the Hotel Gravensteen, right by the castle. It wasn't terribly expensive either. So yeah, that's a great place to stay if you want nice views. Now, I see you laughing now. It's coming through the chat at the Charles V quote. I noticed when I was testing stuff yesterday, testing on the streaming on YouTube, there seemed to be almost a 6-second lag sometimes. So here we have modern art. Yay! And me, look. Does that add or detract from the art piece, I wonder? Having a tour guide with a gimbal. Hello, Chloe. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining. And let's go and look at some of the really famous sites of Ghent. So a couple of things here. Here is the other side of the fish market. There's a bunch of people sitting down there, so I've got a plan B and do it from up here. So this is the entrance that we saw, and then this is the back of the building. And there's the very ancient butcher's hall over here. Can't get a good view from here. Let me just go down that way anyway. Now, unfortunately, this butcher's hall has been closed for such a very long time. Because I would love to go inside. But, yeah, it's been closed for years. Renovation. Which is not surprising given how old it is. But hopefully one day they'll finish, because you could buy all sorts of little local delicacies and that type of thing here. Here's the Design Museum, also well worth a look in. The round windows. Okay, now we're coming up to one of the more famous parts of Ghent. Certainly it's a kind of a picture postcard part of Ghent. And this is the River Lea coming through town, and of course more just beautiful, beautiful buildings. We'll go through a few of them building by building. So, there we go. There's actually a food festival in town that starts tomorrow. Lucky me. There'll be loads of people setting up all over town in anticipation of that. Hello, Satya, and welcome. Thank you for joining. And this church down here, this one over here, is St. Michael or St. Michiel's church, and that's the one without a tower. Okay, because the building of it was somewhat interrupted, and it's late Gothic. It started in 1400s, more or less the middle, but the building of it was interrupted by the 80 Years' War, and it was partially destroyed actually in 1578. And a couple of centuries later, they eventually put the flat top on that tower over there. Now, the 80 Years' War, I mean, one of the reasons I come down here is because of the shared history between, you know, Amsterdam and Ghent and Bruges and Antwerp and Brussels, because they were so closely linked. To answer a question, yes, indeed, these are typical sort of canal boats with glass roofs. Yeah, tourist boats. But check this out. A lot of the buildings here are not actually that old. They finished in about 1909 or something in anticipation for the World Exhibition of 1913. And how pretty it looks. That is great. Now this one coming into shot now has probably got the most amusing story, so something that goes with it, because this one was built new in finished in about 1909, and it was built from the plans of another building, of a pre-existing building, which was the Guild House of the Masons. Okay. The funny, I mean, why it's an amusing story is because the city lost that building. They couldn't find it. I mean, they knew it existed because they had the plans for it, but they'd obviously lost the address where it was built, and it was nowhere to be seen. So they made this building as a copy, almost a carbon copy, not quite, slightly different positioning of the door. And then years later, they were renovating some buildings and they took off a newer facade, and lo and behold, they're hiding behind was the original building. So now they have twins in the city. So have a look at that and I'll show you its twin later. Now here's the oldest step-gabled building in the world. It's a Romanesque facade. It does look a bit old, doesn't it? And I mean, it was run down for such a long time. It's clearly, I mean, it's really cool now, actually. It's a burger place called Manhattan's, and I actually love their burgers. I always go for a burger at Manhattan's when I come to town. I did earlier today as well. The Rockefeller burger, which has got bacon as well as beef. So, but the whole point of this really is that this was a grain store, okay? And so a bit about grain here. Grain was an important product for various reasons. I mean, for making bread is the most obvious, but also for brewing beer. And you couldn't grow grain here. The ground was much too wet. It's why we can't grow grain in the Netherlands either, because it's very similar, very soggy ground. So you do what you do in the right place, but they didn't want to run short of grain. So all the grain coming into Flanders had to come through here. And there was a rule that 20% of the grain had to be stored for 2 weeks in the city. And basically what that meant is that there was always a supply of grain. Okay, so if everything went pear-shaped, they would have a lot of grain in the city because they had a sort of a 2-week buffer of 20% of the grain passing through. So the grain was stored there. And the tax was calculated here in this tiny little building. It's actually from the 1600s. Let me just pop up closer to it, actually. Oops. So, tiny little building here. And it says 1912 on the facade, but that's when it was renovated. It's way older than that. So that's where the tax was calculated. And this is where the grain was actually weighed. That's why it's called the Korenmeter House. And so these 3 buildings are all original, as opposed to the sort of early 19. Hey, Donna, welcome. Thank you for joining. Nice to see you. So these are old buildings. And let's just have a look at this old one here. And then we can look at some of the other side, see how good the zoom is. This is another ancient building, and this is the Guild House of the Free Skippers. Now what that meant is that these were the skippers who were allowed to go wherever the hell they wanted. And they could bring grain right into the city. And they could transport it further afield as well. And here's the ship above the door. Anyway, it's from the 1500s, believe it or not. 1530s, actually. And coming across the way here, we can see the building of the unfree skippers. Okay, these were the ones who weren't allowed to bring their goods into the city. They had to stop at the outskirts, and they had to transfer the goods onto boats that were skippered by the free skippers. And of course there were charges and fees that came with all of that. So that's how it went. It's just how things were. Probably still are. Anyway, on the other side, I'm not sure how well the zoom works. There's the Marriott Hotel. The famous story about the Marriott Hotel, I don't know if you can see here, the two gold blobs. Let's see if I can do my finger there and there are swans. Now, swans famously, when you got a cafe or a bar or an inn, I'm trying to zoom out now and I'm struggling, there we go. Oh. And there was a swan on it. It was a sign that it was actually a brothel. And the story here goes that because there were two swans and they were not facing each other, they were facing away from each other, they didn't make a heart. You know, the two swans facing each other make a heart. So that was a sign that this was an establishment not of true love, but of paid love. So I don't know if that's true or not, but it's what the locals say and I'm prepared to go with it. So, this post office here, I haven't really told you that it's a post office yet. I want to zoom out more. No, out. Okay, there we go. Sweet. Ducks everywhere. I just love it. Quack, quack. Okay. This was also built in so to be ready for the 1913 World Exhibition, as was the bridge, the whole shebang, okay? Except for the church behind, of course, as we were just saying, that's like way older. Everyone's filming. This person with a thing, filming. We're filming. Oh, hilarious. Hasn't film just taken over the world? Everyone is photographing. Look, so there's this wonderful post office building, and here, oh, that's a sweet little detail. And way up on the bridge is St. Michael slaying the dragon. But more about him on the nighttime tour. Let's head up this way. Again, this is a reference to the waterways that gave Ghent its name, and it actually says the Schelde here. The River de Schelde. So S-C-H-E-L-D-E. There we go. Are you postcarding, Donna? Okay. So here on the post office building, let's zoom in just a wee bit. Because this was built for the World Exhibition, there were all these heads of states coming. So all around the side of the building are statues of heads of state from all around the world. As far as peacekeeping goes, it probably wasn't a particularly successful conference because it just predated the First World War. And here, underneath the bridge, by the way, is the bicycle parking. Something completely different. But Ghent is a very student-orientated and bicycle-friendly city. Excuse me. Okay, let me try and get this slightly off the super wide angle. I think it's a bit too wide. Oh gosh. This is a thing I just never quite got right on YouTube. Very, very difficult to control the zoom. Okay, let's check out some more details on this building here. Well, she's looking very countess-like, isn't she? And this is the corn market. The Kornmarkt, it's called. And yeah, that's just for you, Donna, the corn market. And it's all setting up for this food festival that's opening tomorrow. So that's going to be fun. Can't wait. It's going to be really great. Here is the oldest church in town, by the way. This is St. Nicholas Church. Now let's try and get a bit further away from it. There's all a bit of traffic going on here. Oh yay. Let's get us back on the wider angle. There we go. Okay. There was a church back here way back in the 1100s. And that was demolished because it was a bit small. And they started this one in the 1200s. They started building it. So early Gothic, and you already get that with these beautiful pointed arches, letting lots and lots of light in. And it was about majesty through vertical height, sort of reaching up to the heavens, the glory of God and all that type of thing. And in the 16 and 1700s, it got a bit of a Baroque. So I'm just checking that I'm over my shoulders. I'm walking across the street. You know, a bit of a kind of a Baroque revamp because there'd been the Reformation, and then the Counter-Reformation was kicking into gear and really embraced Baroque and made the churches all very, very, very over the top and detailed and grand, and this idea of Catholicism being victorious over Protestantism. So inside it's a festival of Baroque, and yeah, it's been very well renovated. Now, just to dash across the road, oops, one should not dash here. Oh God, bicycles and scooters. But I wanted to show you the building that they lost and found, which is very, very similar to the one I just showed you. The one I just showed you doesn't have all the dancing figures on top, but that's because these were added very much more recently. But this is the original building that they kind of lost track of. And how beautiful is it? So the one that I showed you earlier, the doorway has been moved to the side, but everything else at the top and the shape and the windows are all the same, except this one has got these lovely dancing figures. Isn't it funny? To just forget where they, how it is that they should just forget, like, oh yeah, that's where that building was. It's really, really, really funny. Okay. You try and zoom better. Ah, that's better. Yeah, it looks like these wonderful figures as if they're like twirling in the wind. But they're not. They are fixed. It would be very cool if they were on swiveling bases and they worked like wind vanes rather. Okay, let's carry on. Okay, here is probably the most famous tower of Ghent because it's the Belfry Tower. And Belfry towers were ever so important. This one is from the 1300s. It's also early Gothic in its styling. It's got a gilded dragon on top. I don't know how well this is going to work, but I'll give it a go. Now with this dragon on top, that's a wind vane, eh? This was allegedly brought from Constantinople by the Crusader Baldwin of Flanders. Are there bats in that belfry? I'm pretty sure there aren't now, but there probably were for a long time. Can you climb the tower? Donna, you can, but you didn't really need to because there's an elevator. So I know that's not really what you meant by climb, but yeah, there is an elevator up there. There's a beautiful big carillon, and it's yeah, I mean there's a lot of steps on the way down. This is a 91-meter high tower, so yeah, I've been up. It's great. It's a nice thing to do. Oh, you can see it well. Yeah. No, there's actually an elevator, so I definitely recommend going up on the elevator, and then going down by on the stairs. It's a spiral staircase, so the stairs are not too deep either, so it's okay. You definitely wouldn't want to walk up by stairs. In Bruges, you have to go up if you go up the Belfry, it's stairs on the way up. There's no elevator. Oh, lovely view, Donna, absolutely brilliant from up there. Because you're looking, besides all of Ghent, you're looking down on the square just behind it, which is stunning. Okay, now let's go and have a look at one of the strangest, little myths. Because behind the Belfry Tower was a prison for a while. And there's an ancient Roman legend, and it's depicted here above the door, and it's so weird. Okay, it's a real strange one. Okay, here we go. You ready for it? Close your eyes, children. Okay, here above the entrance of the prison is an elderly man drinking from a younger woman's breast. Now, what the devil's going on here? Well, in the Gallery of Honor in Amsterdam, there is actually a painting of this as well. It's an old Roman legend about a man who was imprisoned, and his sentence was that he should die of starvation in prison. But no one said he couldn't have visitors, however. And his dutiful daughter used to visit him daily, and he just didn't die. And eventually some of the guards spied on him, and they found out why he wasn't dying is because she was feeding him. She was feeding Dad from her breast. No greater love had the daughter shown, apparently. So anyway, they were hauled before the judge again, who thought it was so charming that he freed the old chap. Okay, but it's a bit ooey. It's like, ew, okay, whatever. Oh, those Romans. Right. Yeah. Onto the town hall. Okay, here's the town hall. And this part here is clearly Renaissance, with all the classical motifs, and and it's kind of strange the way they painted it, sure. It's much more empire in the way they painted it, but there's the Doric columns, and then the Ionian ones, and then the Corinthian ones, and the whole shebang. So there we have. That's better. And amazing how wide that angle is. So this is Town Hall Phase 2. Town Hall Phase 1 was florid Gothic, I think you would have to call it, coming into view now. Very, very, very busy, very detailed. And this was early 1500s. Okay. So crazy. I mean, really, really different. Couldn't get more different in the two styles. Right next to each other like this, which is so bizarre. Anyway. Now, this was a very successful trading town, so they wanted to have a lovely town hall. And that's what they were building themselves. And they made this first Gothic bit. And some beautiful details here. There's a gorgeous chapel where many, many people still get married. You can see the vertical stained glass windows here. That's the chapel part. And there's a truck in the way. And then here's a little balcony where it would be possible for people from the city council to address the crowds below, before email, communicate stuff. But yeah, so much insane detail here. Let's just kind of take that in just a little bit. Oh. Wow, that's crazy. I just almost stepped in front of a cyclist and he apologized to me. You know you're not in Amsterdam anymore when that happens. Okay, so isn't it just magnificent? Absolutely beautiful. Now what happened? Oh God. Okay, and here is some of the unrenovated, also a Renaissance add-on. So, like in the front, they've renovated it and they've pimped it all up. Here, it's not restored, and it's got rustication. Okay. Damn that rustication. But anyway, oh look, and here next to it, an ancient building, but then with a gable up at the top with 1700 MDCC on it. And clearly what is below that is older than that. But that's a new add-on the top by the look of it. Okay, we're coming up to time. So let me just explain what happened. They were intending to have a much bigger town hall than this, but this was the first part that they built. And then, sad for Ghent, but Charles V, who I'm going to speak about more in the next tour, who was born here, and he was in charge, he was the main man at the pinnacle of Habsburg power. He was always fighting, he was always had armies all around the world, and he had invaded Italy, and he needed money, and he decided to tax the people of Ghent so he could raise the needed funds for his war. And they didn't like the idea of this much, and they basically said no, to cut a long story short. And he didn't really do no's very well. And so he executed the 25 leaders of the Ghent revolt, and he took away all the privileges of the town, and they didn't have any money anymore, so they couldn't go and build the rest of their town hall. And about 100 years later, they eventually got round to it, but the style had changed, and it was now the Renaissance period. So hey ho, there we go. And that is why we have these two rather strange kind of, well, this incongruous jump here in architectural styles. Anyway. So, 44 minutes. Let's just go through to the main square here. And I can show you some Bath's Cathedral as well, some Bavo. So I think, yeah, we ought to talk about this, because then that'll sort of talk off all the major sort of landmarks of Ghent. There are more, obviously, but St. Bavo's Cathedral. There was a Romanesque church from about the 1100s, and then So that's coming into view now, this tower here, yeah? But the main part of this building happened in the 14 and the 1500s particularly. Actually, when Charles, I told you, when he he very much punished the Ghentians for rebelling, he came into town with a rather big army and he destroyed one of their really important cathedrals. And that's when that was St. Paul's. And that's when this one became much more important and the relics of St. Bavo were brought here. And so, yeah, it's been around in this form really from the 15 and 1600s. It's very beautiful. And it's most known for being the home of the Adoration of the Mystic Lamb altarpiece by Jan van Eyck. And that was completed in 1432, if I remember correctly. And it really is phenomenal. Okay, it's just so beautiful. And you can go there and there's a lovely virtual reality tour you do in the basement, in the crypt rather, about it, and it shows you all about it, and then you go and see the actual altarpiece. It really is phenomenal. So it's God the Father above, and then Christ is the Lamb, and then a gathering of all different types of people paying tribute to this. It really is a remarkable artwork. The detail, the colors, the meaning in it is just phenomenal. It's actually just worth coming to Ghent to see that, frankly, besides how beautiful Ghent is. So, that's it for today. Thanks for joining. Here's the cloth hall behind me, by the way, with an orange cherry picker, and the tower above. Okay. Thanks for joining, everybody. If you want to... Oh, Donna, did I drive or get the train? I certainly came by train. Absolutely. In the description of the tour, there's the Buy Me a Coffee link and all that kind of stuff. If you are not a member of the group I have with Lee on Facebook, that's where you can join as well. That's where we talk about all things tour related. And yeah, tomorrow night I will be doing this in the dark. And it's very beautiful and dark here, so I hope you see you then. Oh, and yeah, coming up, the great excitement, of course, is on the 25th of May. There's going to be a tour in Amsterdam with me and Lee and Patrick Toomey and Dave Kavanagh from Dublin. The link's not there. Did I not put it in? Okay, well, that was remiss of me. So anyway, if you look in some of my upcoming tours, on the live section on my YouTube channel, you will find there's Buy Me a Coffee and PayPal and all that kind of stuff. So much appreciated if you want to make a donation. That'd be really cool. Keeps the whole show on the road. Okay. So bye everybody. Thank you for joining and see you soon.